Good morning. You are listening to National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. I am your host, Doug Dennison, and it's great to be here right after Thanksgiving Day. Again, this is a show that is designed to really provide an educational experience for listeners in a promotional format for auctions across the country. We're going to be talking about bankruptcy auctions today, and very pleased to talk about how things happen in a bankruptcy court, how auction firms get involved, how attorneys get involved, who they basically represent, what are the different sides, what does a judge do. So exciting. Again, we're providing an educational experience for listeners in a promotional format for auctions across the country. We are broadcasting live from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida, the nation's oldest city at WFOY 1240 AM studios. We will also be putting this show on RowAuctions.com, as they are the host of this program. The show will be posted on YouTube.com. We're going to be talking about real estate auctions, past auctions, upcoming auctions, different real estate markets across the country. We've got a lot of topics today. And wonderful Thanksgiving yesterday for myself and my family. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving too. It's always wonderful to be with friends, with family, to take a moment to think about all the wonderful things that we have personally as a family and in our businesses. We all have ups and downs, but it's very, very nice to be able to spend that day together just to reflect. And again, wonderful day yesterday. We're going to be having a bankruptcy attorney call in today. He's from Tallahassee, Florida. Good friend, worked with him before a couple times. We'll talk about what we've done in the past, what he sees as bankruptcy trends, what he sees as things that are going to impact the future of bankruptcies. I'm very anxious to listen to his comments. He is an expert in the field of bankruptcy. It's good to listen if you are one of our listeners who are real estate agents. They are real estate investors, real estate media, banking officials, government officials, bankruptcy attorneys, general public. And my slant today is going to be, how do you get involved in a bankruptcy auction? If you are an investor, if you are a real estate broker, we're all trying to get a deal. If you're a investor, where do you get those deals? Where are they? How do you find out about them? And if you're a real estate broker, an agent, how do you get involved and make some money, serve your clients, all of that kind of stuff? We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back.
MarkNet Alliance is a national, membership-based network of 41 auction companies. Our companies are successful auction professionals with proven track records and thriving businesses. The MarkNet companies have a staff of over 540 employees who are working hard every day to meet the goals of their clients during our ever-changing economy. MarkNet companies are able to achieve these goals through cutting-edge technologies and ever-growing investor pools. To view the hundreds of auctions currently being conducted, or for more information, visit marknetalliance.com.
All right, we're back. You're listening to National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. I am your host. We're going to be talking bankruptcy auctions today. I have had a lot of great experience with bankruptcy auctions, and I'm going to name a few before our guest calls in. In West Miami, a Florida shopping center closed for approximately $21 million. In West Palm Beach, a Florida, 2 hotels closed for approximately $8 million. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, a gas station closed for approximately $2 million. In Miami Beach, a hotel closed for approximately $12 million. In Miami Beach, 108 condos closed for approximately $18 million. In Highlands County, New Jersey, a golf course closed for approximately $10 million in sales. And various other experiences in bankruptcy court. I will not bore you because we've got our caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Morning, Doug. This is Brian Rich.
Well, Brian, thank you so much, especially at a day like today when you come back and we've all eaten too much for Thanksgiving. We've all had great family time, hopefully, and you were nice enough to come on the show today. Thank you so much. Tell us again who you are, where you are from, and what you do, sir.
Sure, and happy Thanksgiving to you and everyone.
Yes.
My name is Brian Rich, and I'm a business reorganization lawyer with the law firm of Berger Singerman. And we are a business law firm with offices in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca, and Tallahassee. And I am based in our Tallahassee office, and my area of specialty is corporate and business bankruptcies and reorganizations, and work with companies in Chapter 11 and work with companies to keep them out of Chapter 11.
Well, let's, again, we have a general public segment. Many of our listeners are real estate brokers and real estate investors, then government officials, banking officials, but the general public is in here and they listen. They don't know what a Chapter 7 is or a Chapter 11, so let's get right into it, Brian. What is the difference, and to the general public, what does that mean to them?
Sure. Well, a Chapter 11 is a process through which a company reorganizes, and they file Chapter 11 with the hopes of emerging from bankruptcy as a viable entity, as a reorganized entity. They can use the bankruptcy process to restructure the debt that they have, to work with their creditors, to come up with a plan that allows them to sort of solve the business problems that they face that force them or require them to go into Chapter 11. But Chapter 11 is basically a restructure of the business operations to allow the company to propose a plan and hopefully successfully emerge. A Chapter 7, in the alternative, is a liquidation. And that is where a company may not have viability to reorganize or restructure. The business hurdles that it is facing are just too difficult, or they're unable to work with the creditors to propose a plan. So they go to a liquidation where the assets of the company are marshaled by a trustee who gets appointed, and the assets are sold, and then the proceeds from the sale are paid pursuant to certain priorities as set forth in the Bankruptcy Code.
Okay, very good. Now, you and I met in Miami before you moved up to Tallahassee. Again, Berger Singerman is a big law firm. Tell us a little bit more about Berger Singerman. Where are their offices? How many attorneys? What's their range of coverage, if you would?
Sure. We have about 70 lawyers, and we are a business law firm. We represent businesses, entrepreneurs, real estate developers, folks who are involved in business disputes. We handle business litigation. We handle real estate transactions, typically larger commercial type transactions. We represent lenders. We represent creditors. And then we have a significant bankruptcy and restructure group. We also have some government and regulatory attorneys who do that type of work. And then we also have wealth preservation, estate planning, and things like that.
Well, you and I have worked a couple of times. I was an auction project manager on several of the bankruptcy auctions that you did, and I worked with our good friend Louis Fisher when I was with another firm. But tell us about the hotels, because that was a pretty exciting deal. It was in West Palm Beach. It was back a few years ago, but tell us a little bit, if you would, how that came about and how we got involved in the results, if you would.
Sure, and it's interesting that we're back talking about hotels again, because over the past few years, we've not seen a lot of traditional hotel bankruptcies or restructures, but they're starting to percolate again, and we are starting to represent a good number of hotel owners who are having issues. Either the property values have dropped, revenues have dropped, or their loans are maturing. So we are starting to see a good number of those cases again. But the case that we worked on really was not a business trouble or a troubled business. It was a shareholder dispute. You had partners who could not agree on the direction of the business. They had two hotels in the West Palm Beach area, and the partners just couldn't get along anymore. And as a result
which happens a lot, right? I mean,
it does.
It does.
It does. Everything is good, when business is good, but when business starts to struggle, sometimes you have a partner who can't put in the capital contributions that may be needed, or one party is pulling their weight more than the other. And in this particular case, it really wasn't a matter of the business being bad. It was they couldn't agree on the direction. One wanted to sell, one didn't want to sell. So ultimately, the corporation went into Chapter 11, and we decided that the best way to solve the dispute was to sell the hotels through an auction process. That way, the partners could fight over money as opposed to the direction of the business. And it's always easier to fight over money when there's money there.
Yes.
And fortunately for us, the auction process allowed us to maximize the value of the hotels. We obtained what, in our world, we call a stalking horse bid, which is where a bidder comes forward and says, I will pay X dollars for these properties. I want to be the first bid, and bid procedures are approved by the court, and typically that stalking horse bidder gets certain protections for being the first bidder and encouraging others to come out and bid, so that if they are not successful in their bid, they can get reimbursed for their expenses and sometimes get a profit component for allowing the process to go forward. And in that particular case, we ended up having multiple bidders and a very successful auction process that resulted in enough recovery to pay all of the creditors in full and to leave money left over for the owners then to fight over.
Nice, nice. Well, that doesn't happen. Excuse me. That doesn't happen all the time where there's money left over, does it?
It does not. That is the rare case, but we do see that happen. And it's interesting as we're here on Thanksgiving, and a lot of folks oftentimes just don't know much about bankruptcy, and then lo and behold, there's a high-profile case like the Hostess case. All of a sudden, everyone seems to be asking me about, well, what's going to happen to Twinkies? Are we going to be able to get Twinkies? And from my standpoint, the media seems to be portraying the fact that Twinkies are going to go away. And while that may happen, I think what in reality is going to happen, because Hostess is in Chapter 11 and they've asked for permission to wind down their operations, in my mind, what I think that means is they're going to look to have an auction to sell their brands, their recipes, their assets, And I think you're going to have a situation where an auction process takes place where someone comes forward to bid on Twinkies, and hopefully, for all the Twinkie lovers out there, including my kids, someone will buy that recipe, buy the name, and it may take some time, but we'll still have Twinkies, and an auction process will help that along and hopefully maximize the value of the Twinkie and the Hostess brand name.
Well, let's talk more about the Twinkie, the Hostess, the whole deal, because sometimes when a business like this is put into bankruptcy, there's questions. Is the whole worth more than the parts? Is there somebody that wants to buy this plant over there, but they don't want to buy all the plants? Somebody might want to buy the recipe, but they don't want to deal with everything else. I mean, how do you do that kind of things? And let's say we magically put you in charge of Hostess, liquidation, or winding down, whatever you want to call it. How would you kind of advise them? And I know that you have no knowledge probably, but I mean, what happens when sometimes you, as somebody that is really advising in a bankruptcy deal, how do you know when it's best to break them apart or sell the whole thing as a whole?
Well, sometimes you don't know, and sometimes what you wish to do, and you're right, I'm not involved in the Hostess bankruptcy case.
And neither am I, but it would be nice if we could, right?
That's right. But what we would do is we would look and obviously work with the financial advisors and the company representatives who are knowledgeable, and we would look at the assets that are there, and sometimes what you would do is you would set up an auction process or a sale process that contemplates two alternatives. And one alternative may be to buy the business lock, stock, and barrel as a going concern.
Yes.
And you would ask for bulk bids or bids for everything as a going concern.
Right.
Or alternatively, you could ask for individual bids on certain assets. And in doing that process, and through the bankruptcy process, and you would get this approved by the judge, you could set up a mechanism where you could go down both roads to see which way would maximize the value. It may be that selling the parts will get you more than if you were to sell everything as a whole, because someone may be real interested in the Twinkies, and someone may be interested in the warehouses and the distribution facilities. And they may be willing to pay more for that, but they don't want the Twinkies.
Right.
So they'll pay for the distribution facilities, and then someone will pay for the Twinkies, and someone will pay for the ding-dongs. And together, those individual components would bring more than what someone would pay for the whole. So you have the option and the flexibility in a bankruptcy sale process to try and determine the best way to maximize the value.
And does that is also kind of slanted because as if you were in charge, I am guessing today, magically, that you're in charge. I'm going to say on Monday, or even today, or even over the weekend, if the news hits that you were in charge, I mean, you'd be getting people like me contacting you about auctions. You'd be getting potential bidders who say, hey, we want the recipe, nothing else. Hey, we are a firm in New York and see this distribution facility, and we really want it because it's right next door to us and we'll pay you top dollar. I mean, does that kind of, not slant, but if you get all these kind of things, then that helps you in your course and your direction?
That's exactly right. And then typically in the bankruptcy process and in the sale process, there would be financial advisors or investment banker types that would help in the sale process, and they have the connections with potential buyers.
Okay.
They know that there's a bakery out there in New York, and it would be perfect to buy the distribution facilities
Got it.
in the northeast part of the country.
Got it.
And they would start reaching out to their contacts. I guess in the old days you would say work in the Rolodex, now
Yep.
work in the Outlook contacts,
Yep.
and reaching out to the people that they believe would have interest. And then you would also advertise, and you would work with the auctioneers to set up the appropriate type of advertising to reach the potential bidders. Obviously in Hostess it's high profile, and
Yep.
there's a lot of media about it, but you still need to get out the word to the people who may have interest, again, in assets that may not be identified with Hostess. Again, going back to the distribution facility and
Yes.
the warehouse facilities.
Yes. Yes. Now, since we did the hotel auction and it was very successful, and again, I was the auction project manager of that sale, and it was wonderful working with you. Things have changed a lot, and it is so much more international, and is so much more internet auction because of the ease and the willingness of bidders to be involved. Have you seen a great deal of change in that area in the past 5-10 years?
Yes, a lot of change in a number of different ways. The first area would be in the due diligence phase.
Ah, okay.
It used to be that if you had an interest in purchasing assets out of a bankruptcy process, you'd have to send a team of folks or
Yep.
some people to the company, to the physical location, and start looking through the books and records. Now the typical process is a virtual data room is set up where
Okay.
all of the information is put out there in a secure location on the internet, and folks who sign appropriate confidentiality agreements and who are interested in the assets can start to do their due diligence virtually and through the internet, and have access to all of the documents that they need that way. So that's one area where it's changed dramatically.
Yep.
And then the next area is the internet auctions, which have been very successful for certain types of assets. Some it works well for. Some auctions still want to have the gavel down and
Yep.
people in the room.
Yep.
But the internet auctions have really changed the way the business has been handled.
Mm-hmm. And there's a variation, and you can still, have an auction in a hotel ballroom per se. Also, with the magic of technology, you can be in Shanghai and bidding at the same time. So there's the best of both worlds kind of a deal too.
Yes, and it's expanded the potential bidders, which in a perfect world brings higher dollars in for the assets.
Yes, yes. Now, tell us why the court uses the auction process, if you would, rather than me, if you would, Brian.
Sure. In a bankruptcy situation, oftentimes you are dealing with time being a significant factor. A company in Chapter 11 or in Chapter 7 liquidation that is looking to sell its assets may have a very limited period of time to accomplish that sale. In a perfect world, you would want to market an asset for 6 months,
Sure.
a year, to try and get the best value.
Yep.
In a distressed situation, you don't have that time because the cash is running out. You don't have the dollars to continue to operate, to continue to keep the lights on.
Right.
So you have a limited period of time, but you still wish to maximize the value. So the judges will look to approve what we call and what they call the sale process, and it has typically been found that the best way to determine the value of an asset is what will someone pay for it? And the best way to determine what someone will pay is to have an auction process open to everyone who is interested, but that allows the initial bid to be out there and then folks to bid in a shorter period of time, shorter marketing period of time, to maximize the value. So the auction process allows everyone to know the rules of the game. Those are set by the judge prior to the auction, and let's say it would be a 60-day process instead of 6 months.
Brian, we're going to have to go for a break. Would you be willing to wait for a couple of ads, and then we'll come back because this is fascinating stuff?
Sure, sure.
Okay, we're on National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, we are back. You're listening to National Real Estate Auction Radio. I am your host, Doug Dennison. We're broadcasting every Friday live from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida at WFOY 1240 AM studios. We have on the line with us Brian Rich, bankruptcy attorney from Berger Singerman in Tallahassee, Florida. It's just, Brian, you still with us?
I'm still here.
Okay. It's very timely because you and I decided probably 3 weeks ago that you were able to come on the show, and I kind of recruited your time. And then just recently, bankruptcy and bankruptcy attorneys and auctions have come into the vogue because Hostess has gone bankrupt. They've gone, and it's in the papers every day, whether it's on the front page or not, and union talk, and will they get together? And we're using this Hostess bankruptcy as kind of a sample how you would get involved if you were the attorney for the firm, or how I would get involved if I was the auction firm involved in this particular case. And we were just asking you about why bankruptcy courts use auctions, and you said shortness of time, and I like that real too. And what I always preach to especially government entities, and of course the United States Bankruptcy Court is a government entity, but I always say an auction is the fairest and most transparent way, and that's why government systems utilize the auction process. And if you don't use an auction and you get into a situation where it's not apples to apples. In other words, an auction gets to tell everybody these are the terms of the auction. This is the deposit. This is when the closing will be. This is when the auction will be. This is how much due diligence information we have. And I always talk about, you put a sign on a building for sale, and what happens is somebody says, yes, I'll buy it for, pick a number, $15 million, but I need 90 days due diligence time. Or somebody else says, hey, I don't need any due diligence time, but $13 million is my number. Or I can pay you $16 million, but I need financing. Can you help me on financing? So you have all these different kind of offers, and if you're in charge of picking one, if you pick somebody, then you've got all the other 42 people saying foul. I would have paid more. You're in cahoots, and so it's very difficult, I think, unless it is a auction process that is fair and transparent. All the terms are available for everyone. Have you ever seen that kind of situation where you can get in trouble if everybody isn't playing the same rules?
Yes, and that is one of the benefits of the bankruptcy auction process, And going back to the stalking horse bidder,
Yes.
typically what would happen if there are multiple bids that are in different forms, either all cash or financing contingencies or different types of due diligence, typically the selling entity, the debtor, would work to select what they think is the best initial offer, the best stalking horse bidder.
Okay.
And then in doing that, they would then establish the bid procedures, meaning a description of when the auction is going to take place, how much due diligence time there will be,
Yep.
the structure of the bids, be it a bulk bid for all of the assets or a component bid for pieces, and then the court would approve that process. So again, so that everything is transparent, because bankruptcy, as we like to say, is life in a fishbowl. Everything needs to be open. And then all of the participants know what the rules are, know what the timing is, know what they're bidding into, and typically alternative bids have to bid into the stalking horse contract, meaning they would have to take the form contract that was provided by the stalking horse bidder and give us a red line or black line version of the contract to show the changes that they propose, so that when you are determining what is the highest and best bid, you have a baseline in which to work off of. And the highest and best bid is really, that's a bankruptcy term of art that the parties and the court will look at to determine in the auction process what is the best offer. And highest and best doesn't always mean highest dollars. It could be that you have an offer that is $1 million less, but is an all cash, no due diligence, we'll close tomorrow bid, versus an offer that is $1 million higher, but has a financing contingency and a long due diligence period. So as the debtor, you may determine, well, it's better to take $1 million less because we'll close tomorrow, because we don't know if that financing contingency is going to come through, and we don't want to take that risk.
Well, that's very good. Highest and best. I want to talk a little bit, because you're getting into what the judges do and how everybody plays out and all the different parties that are involved. So I'm excited about that. But first, give me your contact information. We're going to do it at the end too, but give me your contact information so people can contact you and your firm, because you are a bankruptcy specialist. You are very, very good, and I've had the privilege to work with you in the prior experiences. So tell us how to get a hold of you, Brian.
Sure, and thank you for that, and I feel the same way. Enjoy working with you and your team. Best way to reach me, my direct dial line is area code 850-521-6725, and then my email is brich@bergersingerman.com, and Berger Singerman is BERGERSINGERMAN.
Very, very nice. All right, so getting to the stalking horse like you're talking about, basically it's kind of an insurance policy for the court, is it not, where they can get somebody that says, hey, I'm willing to pay, we'll go back to this $15 million kind of deal. I'm willing to pay $15 million. Here is $500,000 down. I am willing to close in 30 days. I don't need any due diligence. I don't need any financing. I'm ready to go. And so tell me what happens. I mean, the court sees this offer and says, looks pretty good. However, is it the highest? We haven't started marketing it. We really don't know if somebody else can do better. What is the job of a bankruptcy judge to determine how to move forward, if you would?
Well, the judge's role is to oversee and move along the process by making rulings and determinations based upon motions that are brought before it. The judge is not making the ultimate business decision. If a bid is brought before the court and the debtor articulates why it believes that that motion or that offer is the highest and best offer, the judge will say, you have met the requirements or you have not met the requirements for me to approve that it is the highest and best offer. But the judge also helps set the parameters of the sale. An interesting dynamic often develops where the stalking horse bidder, they've had the benefit of doing due diligence to determine what their bid will be.
Right.
And they want the process, they typically want the process to move as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Because they put their bid in, they are comfortable with the bid, and they want the process to move along as fast as possible, really to likely keep out other bidders or to give other bidders less time.
Yep.
But the judge is there to make sure that the rules are fair to everybody. And often you'll have situations where the stalking horse bidder will say, as part of its bid, we want the auction to be within 30 days.
Yep.
But the creditors may object and say, well, that's not fair. The stalking horse has been doing due diligence for 90 days.
Yep.
There are other parties that are out there. We think there should be a 90-day auction process.
Okay.
And the stalking horse bidder will often try and say, well, if the judge doesn't approve a 30-day process, we're going to walk. We're going to withdraw our bids. You can take the risk that someone will come along, but if we don't get it along our rules, we may go away.
Right.
And the judge's role there is to say, well, that may be, we may have to take that risk, because in order to have a fair process and an open process, I, as the judge, am going to order that the process be 90 days or 60 days. Let's
Sure.
cut it down the middle. So the judge is there to make sure that the debtor is meeting its burden to demonstrate that the offers are fair and reasonable and ultimately the highest and best, but also to make sure that the process is fair.
And you touched on this a little bit, but let's delve into it a little bit more. If the stalking horse says, okay, I'll keep my bid, but, if I get outbid, I want some kind of remuneration. I mean, how does that number, is that just negotiated, or is that the judge gets involved? Let's just say, for example, on this $15 million sample bankruptcy example, he says, okay, I'm going to give you this, but if I'm outbid, I want, $300,000 if I'm outbid, and because you've used all my hard work and my offer, and man, I've got my deposit in, I've got my contract signed, I've done everything you've asked, and I'm ready to roll. And the court system probably wants that because now they've got the insurance of that, but they also want to go out and see if there's bigger and better. Tell me more about that.
Sure. There are two components to that. One is called an expense reimbursement, and one is called a breakup fee.
Okay.
And those are typically called buyer protections.
Okay.
And the expense reimbursement is the easier of the two. Routinely, courts would approve that if the stalking horse bidder gets outbid, that they should be entitled to a recovery of the expenses that they incurred in the process.
All right.
And that seems fair, that if they've spent $100,000 in working through and then they're not the successful bidder, that they should recover their fees and expenses if someone else outbids them.
Yes.
The more difficult component is what's called the breakup fee, which is basically the profit component that the stalking horse is asking for. They're saying, if we get outbid, we want to get our expenses paid, and we also want a profit for bringing higher value to the table. Let's say we bid $15 million and someone comes along and outbids us and bids $20 million. Well, because we were the stalking horse bidder, you've recovered $5 million more than what we were going to bid, and we should get something for bringing that value to the table.
Yes.
And there is definitely, in my view, a fairness component to that. They have brought something to the table in adding value, but the courts are not reluctant to award them, but very careful in the amount that may be rewarded.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a percentage. Sometimes the judge will look at a combination of, let's call it, 2 or 3% of the purchase price. The breakup fee and expense reimbursement cannot exceed that amount.
Okay.
So the judge is careful, because in awarding a breakup fee, you also don't want to make it so large that you chill the bidding, because in order to be the highest and best bid above the stalking horse bid, you've got to factor in the expense reimbursement and the breakup fee that would be paid. So if, for example, the breakup fee and expense reimbursement is $500,000, well, someone would need to bid at least $16 million to add $500,000 in value to that $15 million bid, because the $500,000 would go to the stalking horse bidder. So you don't want to make the breakup fee too high that you would chill other bidders from coming to the table.
Very good. And listen, I could go on and on and on, Brian. You've been very, very nice, number one, to come on the day after Thanksgiving, when we're all kind of in a coma from all that turkey kind of a deal. Thank you so much for all of your experience in coming on to the show. Give us your information one more time, because you are a recognized expert in bankruptcies and do very, very large deals across the country. Give us your information again.
Sure. Again, it's Brian Rich, and telephone number is area code 850-521-6725. Email is brich@burgersingerman.com, and the name of the firm is Burger Singerman. And again, we're Florida-based, offices in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Boca Raton, and Tallahassee, and we're here to help and happy to help.
Brian, thank you so much again. Very, very, very good interview, as always. You have a wonderful weekend and spend some time with your family.
Thanks. You do the same.
Take care, Brian.
Bye.
All right. Brian Rich from Burger Singerman up in Tallahassee. I've done a couple of bankruptcy auctions with him before. He's a fine bankruptcy attorney. What we did is we talked about Hostess bankruptcy as an example, because it's sexy and it's in the front page news every day as an example of how things get going, how the structure of the bankruptcy will be, why there would be an auction, because of the fairness and transparency and what he said, the shortness of time. Very, very educational. And that's our radio show mission statement, to provide an educational experience for listeners in a promotional format for auctions across the country. Let's go for a quick break. We'll be right back.
MarkNet Alliance is a national, membership-based network of 41 auction companies. Our companies are successful auction professionals with proven track records and thriving businesses. The MarkNet companies have a staff of over 540 employees who are working hard every day to meet the goals of their clients during our ever-changing economy. MarkNet companies are able to achieve these goals through cutting-edge technologies and ever-growing investor pools. To view the hundreds of auctions currently being conducted, or for more information, visit marknetalliance.com.
All right, we're back listening to the National Real Estate Auction Radio Show. We're broadcasting live from beautiful St. Augustine, Florida, the nation's oldest city, at WFOY 1240 AM studios. We're talking bankruptcy auctions because it's so sexy, because it's so visible. We're talking about the Hostess bankruptcy. Very good information. And again, thank you, Brian Rich from Burger Singerman, Tallahassee, Florida. Let's go on to our next caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Doug.
Well, Allison from Rowell Auctions, our sponsor of the show. And Allison, you are the executive producer of the show. Always make me sound good, which is very hard to do all the time, but I thank you for all your help. Really, you've done a great job with the show. Thank you, Allison.
Not a problem. I enjoy doing it.
All right. Well, you are from Rowell Auctions. You've got the finger on the pulse of that company. You get the calls. You forward them to the real estate agents, the auction agents. What is coming up for Rowell Auctions in the next few weeks, if you would?
Sure. Well, November the 27th, which is Tuesday of next week, we've got some Metro Atlanta and West Georgia assets that are selling absolute. And then the following day, Wednesday, we have about another 38 that are selling absolute in North Georgia to go with it.
And these are bank properties?
Yes, they are.
Wow.
And they are absolute.
And absolute means what again?
No minimum, no reserve. We'll go to contract to the highest bidder.
So absolute auction means sold to the highest bidder regardless of price, no minimums, no reserves. I mean, the best way to buy, best way to sell, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Very, very good. What else you got for us, Allison?
We've got some apartment buildings in Camilla, Georgia. That's going to be Thursday, November the 29th. That's online only.
Okay.
The same day, we've got some Tift County properties. That'll be at 6 p.m. that night.
Mm-hmm.
On December the 4th, we've got some residential homes and some estate.
Okay. And where is that located?
That is going to be in Colquitt County, Georgia.
Okay. Well, excellent. And you talked a little bit about the absolute, which I think everybody realizes that that's the one they want to focus on. If it's absolute, it's going to sell no matter what. It gives you the incentive to take the time and effort to research the property, to get ready for it, and maybe have some of your people do some research on it, because you know it's going to sell. It's not going to be there the next day. So that's exciting news. How do people bid online? Because it is the trend, but a lot of people still don't know what to do. And a couple of these upcoming auctions are online. Tell us what you have to do and how you can do it if you're a novice.
Sure. First step would be to go to the website, rowellauctions.com. Once you've gone to the website, you're going to need to create an account to be able to have access to bid. And that would be simply just going to the upper right-hand corner and creating an account.
Okay.
Once you've created an account, then you can go back into the property that you're interested in and place a bid.
And if you go, what is the website, first of all? What's the website for all of these auctions to get information, if you could?
rowellauctions.com, and it's ROWELLAUCTIONS.com.
And does it have property information? Does it have terms, conditions? What?
We've got terms, conditions. We've
Okay.
got photos. We've got, if there's a local realtor that's working with us, we'll have their information if you need to go view the property itself.
Nice, nice.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's rawauctions.com. What if I'm hearing this and I'm driving by, I can't write down the address or whatever, or I do not like, dealing that much with the internet. I want to talk to a person. I want to be able to say, what if, and who do I speak to? What's the deal? Is there a telephone number that they can reach Rowell Auctions at?
Sure, there is. It's 800-323-8388.
Do it one more time for us.
800-323-8388.
Well, Allison, as always, you've done a great job. Must be very busy. I appreciate you calling in. You've got a whole bunch of great auctions coming up there. I thank you for being the executive producer of this show. You do an awesome job, and I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. You have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Take care now. All right, that was Allison Marchetti from Rowell Auctions talking about some absolute auctions coming up in Georgia. 79 bank properties that are going to be sold on November 27th and November 28th. Go on to, right now, RowellAuctions.com. Look at the properties. There's houses. There's other things. There's all kinds of properties. You want to do that really quickly. And we're about to wind down, but I want to thank, again, Brian Rich from Berger Singerman in Tallahassee, Florida, really educating all of our people on bankruptcy auctions. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy your family for this weekend, and come back next Friday. We'll be on.